The third step prayer, which is on page 63 of your big book. You want to follow along. God, I offer myself to thee, to build with me and do with me as thou wilt. Relieve me of the bondage of self, that I may better do thy will. Take away my difficulties, that victory over them may bear witness to those I would help of thy power, thy love, and thy way of life. May I do thy will always.
All right. Okay, today we are starting on page XXIII. It is the forward to the 4th edition beginning. So with that, we'll go ahead and just kick off at the top of the page there, Rob.
You got it. So page XXIII, forward to the 4th edition. This 4th edition of Alcoholics Anonymous came off press in November 2001 at the start of the new millennium. Since the 3rd edition was published in 1976, worldwide membership of AA is just about double to an estimated 2 million or more, with nearly 100,800 groups meeting in approximately 150 countries around the world.
So I guess it's just a simple kind of statement. We're growing by leaps and bounds. Obviously, this is really some explosive growth over the last 25 years or so. And I can tell you that we've continued to grow since then, and we'll get that in just a minute. Rob?
Literature has played a major role in AA's growth, and a striking phenomenon of the past quarter century has been the explosion of translations of our basic literature into many languages and dialects. In country after country where the AA seed was planted, it has taken root, slowly at first, then growing by leaps and bounds when literature has become available. Currently, Alcoholics Anonymous has been translated into 43 languages.
Yeah, I guess what I'll just note here with regard to that, we're now over 70 languages as opposed to the 43. So, Rob?
Yep. As the message of recovery has reached larger numbers of people, it has also touched the lives of a vastly greater variety of suffering alcoholics. When the phrase, "we are people who normally would not mix," page 17 of this book, was written in 1939, it referred to a fellowship composed largely of men and a few women with quite similar social, ethnic, and economic backgrounds. Like so many of AA's basic texts, those words have proved to be far more visionary than the founding members could ever have imagined. The stories added to this edition represent a membership whose characteristics of age, gender, race, and culture have widened and have deepened to encompass virtually everyone the first 100 members could have hoped to reach.
Yeah. So we're kind of looking at instead of literature and the numbers of people and the numbers of groups around the world, as well as the languages that it's been interpreted in. We're now looking at the diversity of the participants that are involved in the AA program. And right now it's more diverse than it ever has been. And I would guess that it's going to continue to be that way. Rob?
While our literature has preserved the integrity of the AA message, sweeping changes in society as a whole are reflected in new customs and practices within the fellowship. Taking advantage of technological advances, for example, AA members with computers can participate in meetings online, sharing with fellow alcoholics across the country or around the world. In any meeting anywhere, AAs share experience, strength, and hope with each other in order to stay sober and help other alcoholics. Modem to modem or face to face, AAs speak the language of the heart in all its power and simplicity.
Yeah, thank goodness for the online version of AA, huh? We come from all over the world, literally, and actually can conduct a meeting, and we do on a minute by minute basis throughout the day. So there's a message there's something I like to say at the end of this particular section, and that is that one thing that doesn't change in regards to AA, and that is the message. The message itself, it never changes. It always stays the same. The only thing that really changes is the fellowship, as we've just now talked about and read, and the way that we carry that said message forward. So kind of think of it in terms of that. The message never changes, so which is kind of nice, good, and has that really good foundation. So All right, we are going to embark on probably one of the best chapters out there, the one that most people refer to as one of the first things to read in this book as part of somebody's indoctrination into AA as a newcomer, and also somebody that just wants to kind of get an idea of a little bit about AA, a little bit about alcoholism. We are, in fact, talking about the doctor's opinion. And we are going to be reading about the doctor himself, that is William D. Silkworth, Dr. William D. Silkworth, a neurologist by training, but also a self-proclaimed psychologist that was running the recovery or alcohol recovery program at Towns Hospital. He was born in 22 June of 1873. And died 22 March of 1951. Most people don't know this, but you know, he came out of retirement after the stock market crashed. He had lost most of his savings and had to go back to work. And that's when he started working at the Towns Hospital and in New York City, which stayed open, as a matter of fact, until 1965. Great year, by the way. That's when I was born. So, anyway, so we're going to be reading what he has to say about alcoholism, and with that, I will turn it over to Rob.
Yeah, we're on page XXV, starting at the doctor's opinion. The doctor's opinion. We of Alcoholics Anonymous believe that the reader will be interested in the medical estimate of the plan of recovery described in this book. Convincing testimony must surely come from medical men who have had experience with the sufferings of our members and have witnessed our return to health. A well-known doctor, chief physician at a nationally prominent hospital specializing in alcoholic and drug addiction, gave Alcoholics Anonymous this letter.
Yep. So we are talking, in fact, we've got expert testimony, or convincing, if you will, and we're going to basically validate what we believe is a great opinion of what alcoholism is, and coming from a medical doctor that faced this and did work with it on a daily basis for several years. Rob?
Yeah, the top part was written by Bill in order to sort of introduce what's happening. The letter was intended to get sent out to donors. Remember that Hank Parkhurst, one of the least known people in AA, but one of the most important, and Bill were trying to raise funds in order to get this book done. So they were sending out letters and trying to get endorsements from medical people. So that's why this letter is important. You know, they needed medical people in order to, you know, say, yeah, this program does work. To whom it may concern, this was written July 27, 1938. To whom it may concern, I've specialized in the treatment of alcoholism for many years. In late 1934, I attended a patient who, though he had been a competent businessman of good earning capacity, was an alcoholic of a type I had come to regard as hopeless.
Yep. So we're going to kind of kick things off. Obviously, this is an endorsement for the book, written on the 27th of July, 1938. And he, in fact, is just introducing himself as a specialist in the treatment of alcoholism. And he's attending a patient, which we will find out is obviously Bill Wilson. And that's what kicked everything off with regard to getting things started. Also want to make a point here. The Dr. Silkworth didn't give him this. It's something he got from Evie and his finding his higher power. So, Rob, we'll go ahead and read through to the rest of the letter where he finishes up at the top of the next page.
Okay, you got it. In the course of his third treatment, he acquired certain ideas concerning a possible means of recovery. As part of his rehabilitation, he commenced to present his conceptions to other alcoholics, impressing upon them that they must do likewise with still others. This has become the basis of a rapidly growing fellowship of these men and their families. This man and over 100 others appear to have recovered. I personally know scores of cases who are of the type with whom other methods have failed completely. These facts appear to be of extreme medical importance because of the extraordinary possibilities of rapid growth inherent in this group. They may mark a new epoch in the annals of alcoholism. These men may well have a remedy for thousands of such situations. You may rely absolutely on anything they say about themselves. Very truly yours, William B. Silkworth, MD.
Certainly, yeah. I've got a couple of things highlighted. He commenced to present his conceptions to other alcoholics and impress upon them that they must do likewise with still others. Right off the bat, we're actually talking about the 12th step, and that is sitting down with another alcoholic and working with them, and also reinforcing the fact that once this has happened for you, that you do the same. Then he does talk about scores of cases who were of the type with whom other methods had failed completely. And those methods included medical and physical type of activities and that type of thing, or a combination thereof. Some psychological type of meetings and gatherings and stuff like that. Again, what we're looking at here is that this particular program of AA is something that's worked when other approaches have failed completely. And I guess what I'll finish up in saying is that, you know, we may well have a remedy for thousands of such situations. I think that we've proven that over and over again, that in fact they do. Rob?
Yeah, the biggest thing I want to point out is that the humility of this doctor is incredible. You know, for him to allow a patient, you know, that he had seen 3 times, you know, the third time he comes into what he's seen Bill for the third time, and he's noticed a change in Bill. Something has changed. So he allowed Bill, you know, to work with other people. You know, think about it. You go to an insane asylum and one of the patients is allowed to work with the other patients. You know, it's just, it's wild. Now, we also know that Bill has been in treatment 4 times. In the book, Pass It On, it mentions 4 treatments. You know, the Dr. Silkworth talks about his 3rd treatment. And so a lot of people say Bill only went to treatment 3 times, but we know from the book, Pass It On, that Bill went into treatment 4 times. The physician who, at our request, gave us his letter has been kind enough to enlarge upon his views in another statement which follows. In this statement, he confirms what we who have suffered alcoholic torture must believe, that the body of the alcoholic is quite as abnormal as his mind. It did not satisfy us to be told that we could not control our drinking just because we were maladjusted to life, that we were in full flight from reality, or were outright mental defectives. These things were true to some extent, in fact, to a considerable extent with some of us, but we are sure that our bodies were sickened as well. In our belief, any picture of the alcohol which leaves out this physical factor is incomplete.
Right, and this is the first place that we see of the 2 symptoms, the malady and the allergy. Even though they aren't calling it that just yet, they will. We talk about the body of the alcoholic is quite as abnormal as his mind. So there's first the body and the mind, the allergy, in this case, and the malady, if you want to reverse them around. And then they continue to make reference to the physical and the mental deficiencies or symptoms that we call it today, which are the 2 symptoms of alcoholism, and that is the malady and the allergy. And we will cover that in great detail going forward. And when they do talk about our belief, it is of the first 100 or so folks that found recovery by doing this program. But they also just, again, it's just a reinforcement here with the first introduction of the 2 symptoms. Rob?
The doctor's theory that we have an allergy to alcohol interests us. As laymen, our opinion as to its soundness may, of course, mean little. But as ex-problem drinkers, we can say that his explanation makes good sense. It explains many things for which we cannot otherwise account.
Yeah, and we're just now going to just kind of introduce the allergy. Rob will just keep reading. It's the first symptom of alcoholism.
You got it. Though we work out our solution on a spiritual as well as an altruistic plane, we favor hospitalization for the alcoholic who is very jittery or befogged. More often than not, it is imperative that a man's brain be cleared before he is approached, as he has then a better chance of understanding and accepting what we have to offer.
Yeah. And so what we're talking here about is something that's very serious. Also, this is of reference, and I think it's important, which I'm also very pleased that they put it in here. And that is that favoring hospitalization or some type of professional oversight for somebody that's going through a detoxification. As we have stated before, and know that you can actually die from the delirium tremens and going through a detoxification or detoxing. And in fact, the statistics are about 15% of people that go through that actually do in fact pass away. The other thing I like to do, and that is that the altruistic plane, and we're talking about an unselfish service to others. Again, just a reference to the fact that we believe that one of the best things that you can do as a recovering and or recovered alcoholic, and that is to work with other people. Rob?
Yep. The doctor writes, we're at the top of page XXVII. The doctor writes, the subject presented in this book seems to me to be of paramount importance to those afflicted with alcohol addiction. I say this after many years' experience as medical director of one of the oldest hospitals in the country treating alcoholic and drug addiction. There was therefore a sense of real satisfaction when I was asked to contribute a few words on a subject which is covered in such masterly detail in these pages.
Yep, and we're really now just kind of getting into the meat of what Dr. Silkworth believes and has witnessed. We are in fact talking about the Towns Hospital, and he's getting ready to kind of give his even more detailed opinion. They asked him to kind of expand upon his introductory letter that we just read as being a part of this. And again, this is meant to be part of the introduction of the book. Rob?
There was therefore a real sense of There was therefore a sense of real satisfaction when I was asked to contribute a few words on a subject which is covered in such masterly detail in these pages. We doctors have realized for a long time that some form of moral psychology was of urgent importance to alcoholics, but its application presented difficulties beyond our conception. But with our ultra-modern standards, our scientific approach to everything, we are perhaps not well equipped to apply the powers of good that lie outside our synthetic knowledge.
And I referenced this, that particular passage there that Rob just read. Over on page 162, it's first paragraph down from the top of the book, and that is, every few days this doctor suggests our approach to one of his patients. Understanding our work, he can do this with an eye to selecting those who are willing and able to recover on a spiritual basis. So it's an interesting kind of time. Bill and others relied on medical professionals in the actual finding of potential members of Alcoholics Anonymous, and they would actually go out and find some of the worst off cases. They attempted to do it in the sense that they would actually search them out, whereas today it's less so. There are people that actually go out and try to find newcomers as that goes, and that is obviously great. But at the same time, we do have a lot of people coming to AA on their own, and so it's a bit different. I don't think that there's many, if any, that actually seek out a doctor or medical professional or clergy and try and find somebody that is suffering from alcoholism to try and work with, although I'm sure it happens on occasion. bottom line is that more so it is the individual recovered alcoholic going to meetings and finding newcomers, and it's also newcomers coming to AA and searching things out from that standpoint. Rob?
Yeah, moral psychology. The whole idea of moral psychology is to change the mind or the thinking. It was founded in the 1930s. AA, and an early sort of moral psychology, was attracted the interest of people like Jung. They assert that alcoholism is not a moral failing, but a disease. Paradoxically, alcoholism can only be cured by a complete mental renovation. In other words, to change our thinking. Remember, later on in the book, when Roland Hazard goes and sees Dr. Jung, Dr. Jung was trying to change his thinking, trying to change the way he looked at things. They found that a lot of the alcoholics are selfish and self-centered. We basically know that. So changing the way of thinking, that becomes the difficult part. How do we change people's thinking? This is where spirituality comes in. Spirituality teaches us that, what can we do for other people instead of ourselves? Therefore, our thinking is changing from being selfish and self-centered. What am I going to get out of it? To what can I do for somebody else? Moral psychology. I'm getting off my soapbox now.
No, that was great.
Many years ago, one of the leading contributors to this book came under our care in this hospital, and while here, he acquired some ideas which he put into practical application at once. Later, he requested the privilege of being allowed to tell his story to other patients here, and with some misgiving, we consented. The cases we have followed through have been most interesting. In fact, many of them are amazing. The unselfishness of these men, as we have come to know them, the entire absence of profit motive, and their community spirit is indeed inspiring to one who has labored long and wearily in this alcoholic field. They believe in themselves and still more in the power which pulls chronic alcoholics back from the gates of death.
Yeah, we're talking about Bill W., obviously a leading contributor to this book and under our care, and it had required some ideas. I think it's interesting that they do, in fact, admit that they had reservation with regard to Bill and others coming into the hospital. I think there was some concern that there was going to be a profit center created around this. There was going to be some encroachment on what was happening, and it's interesting that a medical doctor tends to not want to. Not let into the facility and or the program that they're working anything that would be non-medical, because obviously that's not what they're there for. But in this case, Dr. Silkworth did in fact allow Bill and others to come in, and over time became sold on the idea and the program that was outlined by Bill and others as far as AA is concerned. I did highlight the last sentence here, and that is that they believe in themselves and still more in the power which pulls chronic alcoholics from the gates of death, and certainly so. Again, remember, they tried to go after some of the worst cases out there, and capitalizing power. Obviously, we're talking about our higher power, or in some cases, or in most cases, God. Rob?
Yeah, Towns Hospital, which we come to know as where Dr. Silkworth was working, was not for the cheap. You had to be quite wealthy or had to somehow be able to raise an awful lot of funds in order to go there. Dr. Silkworth saw these people come in, leave, be dried out, and then come back again in a very short period of time. And so frustrated by this because, the doctor wants to help people. The hospital was for the wealthy, but they do want to have a track record of being successful. And there was a certain type of alcoholic that they just kept coming back. And we read about this all through the book about people, on his 6th time in treatment, he asked to see us, things like that. But there was a certain type of alcoholic that Dr. Silkworth wasn't able to get through to. By changing his mind, he couldn't do the moral psychology. Bill came up with a way, spirituality, and he wanted to share it with other people. Dr. Silkworth, being so frustrated that he couldn't help these people, thought, hey, Anything is better than nothing. Let's try it. Of course, an alcoholic ought to be freed from his physical craving for liquor, and this often requires a definite hospital procedure before psychological measures can be of maximum benefit. We believe, and so suggested a few years ago, that the action of alcohol on these chronic alcoholics is a manifestation of an allergy, that the phenomenon of craving is limited to this class and never occurs in the average temperate drinker. These allergic types can never safely use alcohol in any form at all. And once having formed the habit and found they cannot break it, once having lost their self-confidence, their reliance upon things human, well, their problems pile up on them and become astonishingly difficult to solve.
Absolutely. And here we are reading the first part of this. Of course, an alcoholic ought to be freed from his physical craving for liquor and often requires a hospital stay. Certainly what the idea is that an alcoholic should be at least marginally, if not moderately sober before they're approached. It's usually a good idea to do this right after a spree. And when they seem to be at their most willing to actually listen to somebody about a way out from this ailment. We go on and we start to talk about the first symptom of alcoholism, and that is the allergy. And it's a manifestation that it creates a phenomenon of craving, which is after the first drink. And we're not talking about after the first whole drink. We're talking about after the first sip or gulp of alcohol. This kicks in, and what it basically does is once you start, you can't stop. And that's kind of the meat and potatoes of this whole idea with regard to that. And then we finish up in this paragraph talking about that they lose their self-confidence, their reliance upon things human, and their problems pile up on them and become astonishingly difficult to solve. So what we're basically referring to here and stating is that no human power is capable of relieving you of this affliction. And lastly, and it's probably one of the most important notes here, and that is that the allergic type alcoholic can never safely use alcohol in any form at all. That's an important thing to digest. It's an important thing to personally and privately admit to yourself. You have to dig into your innermost self, and you have to be convinced of this. Otherwise, if you still have inclination, an inclination to think that you could somehow go for a period of time and then drink and be okay, you're not quite there yet. You're not quite ready, and you're going to find out that you can't drink alcohol safely. Now, it gets worse and worse and worse as you grow older and you progress in your in alcoholism, and we've seen that time and again, where people actually take less and less time, less and less alcohol to get to the same place that they were in the problem place that they're at. It just gets worse and worse. So this idea that you can go for a week, a month, a year, a decade, whatever it might be, of not drinking, and then all of a sudden you can go back to it, you're going to find almost to a person that within a couple of weeks you're going to be knee deep, and then if not neck deep, and then you're going to be it's going to be overwhelming, and you're going to be having your problem. So think of this as you take a drink and you just can't stop, and that's the allergy in a nutshell. Rob?
Yep. And once again, going to reiterate, okay, or drive home the point that Leo just made. Here we're finding out that it's an allergy, the phenomenon of craving, that once we ingest any alcohol into our system, our body craves more, and that our metabolism slows down as we age. Therefore, we don't break down the alcohol as quickly as we did when we were, 18, 19, 20 years of age, And once forming a habit, found they cannot break it. Okay, the chemical reaction to alcohol. Okay, remember, alcohol only has an effect once it is ingested. Frothy emotional appeal seldom suffices. The message which can interest and hold these alcohol people must have depth and weight. In nearly all cases, their ideals must be grounded in a power greater than themselves if they are to recreate their lives.
Absolutely. And this is going to be the first introduction to the fact that you're going to have to find something bigger than humanly possible. So you're going to have to reach deeper than you've ever reached, and you're going to have to rely on a power greater than yourself, greater than others, and that goes beyond human power in order to find the foundation that's necessary in stopping your drinking. Rob?
If any feel that as psychiatrists directing a hospital for alcoholics, we appear somewhat sentimental, let them stand with us a while on the firing line, see the tragedies, the despairing wives, the little children. Let the solving of these problems become a part of their daily work and even of their sleeping moments. And the most cynical will not wonder that we have accepted and encouraged this movement. We feel after many years of experience, we have found nothing which has contributed more to the rehabilitation of these men than the altruistic movement now growing up among them.
Yeah, kind of a, this is a reference to Dr. Silkworth and his psychiatry practice. And so we've got that. And he is in a very kind of high level, but summary here is let them stand with us while on the firing line. And he's essentially describing the things that they've seen and gone through without going into a lot of detail. And they also reiterate their experience with the fact that they say with many years and a lot of it that we have found nothing which has contributed more to the rehabilitation of these men than an altruistic movement now growing up among them. And that is this the success that they've seen with hopeless alcoholics, that they became more and more convinced that this was something that actually worked with some of the worst out there. We've now found out that it works across all spectrums of alcoholics. And that certainly is just a reinforcement here in this letter. Rob?
Yeah, and I'll just drive home the point. Nothing is working better than what they're doing, the 12-step program. Men and women drink essentially because they like the effect produced by alcohol. The sensation is so elusive that while they admit it's injurious, they cannot, after a time, differentiate the true from the false. To them, their alcoholic life seems the only normal one. They are restless, irritable, and discontented unless they can again experience a sense of ease and comfort which comes at once by taking a few drinks which they see others taking with impunity. After they have succumbed to the desired gain, as so many do, and the phenomena of craving develop, they pass through the well-known stages of a spree, emerging remorseful with a firm resolution not to drink again. This is repeated over and over, and unless this person can experience an entire psychic change, there is very little hope of his recovery.
Absolutely. And we're now getting into the real description here of the insanity of drinking and the life of an alcoholic, the sensation as far as the effects produced by alcohol. All of us to a person can raise their hand and say that they in fact did enjoy at least the initial effects of alcohol. Maybe not the latter effects when you're at the point of being nauseous and near passing out, but at the same time, you can't help yourself but get there in the first place. They drink to a point that they can't tell true from false, and that is certainly true with regard to an alcoholic. And it just seems like that the only normal thing for an alcoholic is to live this life day in and day out, time and time again. And they are certainly somebody that's restless, irritable, and discontented. And I think it's important to kind of note that, because most of us think of the drinking as something of a happy time, a celebratory, or some type of easing of, shedding of the stress of the day, that type of thing. It really doesn't turn out that way for an alcoholic. That desperation that alcoholics feel, and the need to get that alcohol in their system so that they can feel that release. But what ends up happening is they find that they're chasing it and never truly get to the point that they want to be at, which is that kind of happy, joyous, and free, if you will. I'm kind of pulling a little bit from that with regard to the happy, joyous, and free. We don't refer to it except for when somebody's not drinking at all. But nonetheless, the looking around to others who are able to drink 1 or 2 or maybe 3 drinks and just absolutely put it down, walk away, and have a lot of fun in the process. We just don't get there and can't do it. So this restless, irritable, and discontent is certainly applicable. We're not talking about necessarily a drinking problem here. We're talking about a consequence problem. So just kind of in terms of thinking about what it is that we're working on here, we're talking about the person that gets to a point where they're drinking all the time and consequences are just kind of piling up on themselves. That's really what happens when we get somebody that comes into AA and wants some help. It's that you can almost to a person tell that the consequences have become insurmountable and they are out of control and can't seem to get ahead by any stretch of the imagination. And so they drink, they can't stop, and the phenomenon of craving develops, which is again a reference to the allergy. We talked a little bit about the insanity here as well. And this time and time again, where you drink, you apologize, promise, and then you drink, apologize, and promise. It just goes over and over and over again, and those apologies start to become hollow. And how many times do you have to go through this before you finally realize that you're in a bad place? And this is also first time that we talk about a psychic change. That's important to note. That's a part of this finding of a human, beyond human power type of thing. And if you can't and don't, there's very little hope for you until you do find it. Obviously, you're not able to control it on your own. Rob?
Yeah, with a firm resolution not to drink again. Why do we pick up that first drink when we know what's going to happen? That we'll get into in a little bit. And also, this is repeated over and over, and unless this person can experience an entire psychic change. What is psychic change? Change in our mind, change in the way we think. On the other hand, as strange as this may seem to those who do not understand, once a psychic change has occurred, the very same person who seemed doomed, who had so many problems, he despaired of ever solving them, suddenly finds himself easily able to control his desire for alcohol, the only effort necessary being that required to follow a few simple rules.
Yeah, and we're going to find out what those few simple rules are. Obviously, we're referring to the 12 steps. We are also talking about this psychic change and having had it occur. It's a testament to the positiveness of what we're going to be doing here. And I think it's important to talk about here, and that is the difference between desire and the illness where you cannot control yourself. You know, the desire of wanting to control your drinking and or drink like others, or not drink at all, is certainly some obsessions that we're going to be talking about. And the illness itself is that you have very little control over that. And no matter how much you promise yourself that you're either not going to drink again or you're only going to drink 1 or 2 drinks, you'll be pounding the table or bar and wondering how you got there after you've finished off your 4th or 5th or 6th drink, and now you've lost control once again. That is what we're talking about as far as the illness is concerned, and there is no control over that. But we do reference the fact that there is the strong possibility of a psychic change, and once it's occurred, you will find that easily able to control your desire for alcohol, and it does in fact wane and go away over a period of time once this is all started to occur. And it certainly is true for me in regards to that desire. Not hardly ever is there even the inclination of drinking anymore, which I find very thankful for. Rob?
Yeah, this book is going to tell us what the problem is, what the solution is, and what our course of action we need to take in order to be recovered. You know, a lot of people want to argue about the point whether we recover from alcoholism or not, which is fine. We don't get into that debate right now. But the whole idea is right now they're talking about what is the problem. When I first came into the fellowship, I didn't understand. I didn't know I had an allergy. I knew that when I picked up a drink that I was gone for the rest of the night, but I didn't know why. And it wasn't until I came into the big book studies that I realized that and in the doctor's opinion here, he talks about an allergy that once I take any alcohol into my system whatsoever, it creates a phenomenon of craving and my body wants more. I didn't understand that when I first came in. Nobody, when I came into the fellowship, said, Rob, you got an allergy. Nobody told me about that. One person in one of the meetings said that he had an unquenchable thirst. And I went, wow, I can relate to that. I understand that. You know, that no matter how many drinks I took, I always needed another one. Men have cried out to me in sincere and despairing appeal, Doctor, I can't go on like this. I have everything to live for. I must stop, but I cannot. You must help me. Faced with this problem, if a doctor is honest with himself, he must sometimes feel his own inadequacy. Although he gives all that is in him, it often is not enough. One feels that something more than human power is needed to produce the essential psychic change. Though the aggregate of recoveries resulting from psychiatric effort is considerable, we physicians must admit we have made little impression upon the problem as a whole. Many types do not respond to the ordinary psychological approach.
Yeah, so it's interesting that Dr. Silkworth is admitting the fact that there are potential shortcomings from a medical or physical approach to alcoholism, and in this case, more of a psychological approach with therapy, et cetera. And he does describe this to a T with the fact that you get to that point of desperation and you're crying out to have somebody, somehow, something to enter into your life and help you to stop drinking because you cannot do it on your own. One feels that something more than human power is needed to produce the essential psychic change. And this is coming from a medical professional and a scientist. So I think it's important to note that even Dr. Silkworth admitted that you had to find something bigger than a human, than your human power in order to be able to combat alcoholism. And many types do not respond to the ordinary, and I always like to say, or the extraordinary psychological approaches that are out there. I think it's worth noting that no matter how hard, no matter how big you try with regard to human approaches, that you've got to find this psychic change in searching out your higher power. Rob?
Yeah, I do not hold with those who believe that alcoholism is entirely a problem of mental control. I have had many men who had, for example, worked a period of months on some problem or business deal, which was to be settled on a certain date favorable to them. They took a drink a day or so prior to the date, and then the phenomenon of craving at once became paramount to all other interests, so that the important appointment was not met. These men were not drinking to escape. They were drinking to overcome a craving beyond their mental control.
Yeah, and so it isn't just that people drink in despair and when things are bad and when they're in a low state of mind. We're talking about people that have got everything to gain, nothing to lose, and they are out there fighting off this craving when even things are going very, very well. So just as a reference to this, I think it's one of those points that they do so well in making, and that is that it isn't just the ugly side of drinking and or the reasons for drinking. It is some of the most positive and celebratory types of things that are also occurring that an alcoholic cannot cannot do safely. So that's important. Rob?
Yeah, before they were drinking for the effect, you know, now they're drinking because they can't stop themselves. There are many situations which arise out of the phenomenon of craving, which cause men to make the supreme sacrifice rather than continue to fight. The classification of alcoholics seems most difficult, and in much detail is outside the scope of this book. There are, of course, the psychopaths who are emotionally unstable. We are all familiar with this type. They're always going on the wagon for keeps. They're over remorseful and make many resolutions, but never a decision.
Right. We're going through a couple of things here. The phenomenon of craving, which caused men to make the supreme sacrifice. We are in fact talking about dying. So there are people out there that drink themselves to death, and that's important to note. I think it's an important thing to get across to a newcomer, especially just to make sure that they are aware of the fact that how serious this issue is, and challenges that will be faced are meant to try to save somebody's life. And not just get somebody to stop drinking because it's just a fashionable thing to do. This is actually very serious, and we are talking about saving somebody's life. We're going to be talking about 5 different types of alcoholics in the next couple of passages here. And the first one that we do, in fact, talk about is the psychopath, and who are emotionally unstable. That's something beyond just somebody that's quote, I would say, of normal psychological kind of capacity, and it's different in that the ones that are going to be tough to deal with because we've got something beyond just alcoholism that they're going to be dealing with. That the psychopaths tend to be going on the wagon for keeps, keep promising, and they're also over remorseful and make resolutions but never a decision. This is kind of that roller coaster approach to making promises that you can't keep, but probably in most cases don't have any intention on keeping completely. And that's why you've got to dig so deep. Rob?
There is the type of man who is unwilling to admit that he cannot take a drink. He plans various ways of drinking. He changes his brand or his environment. There is a type who always believes that after being entirely free from alcohol for a period of time, he can take a drink without danger. There is the manic depressive type, who is perhaps the least understood by his friends, and about whom a whole chapter could be written. Then there are the types entirely normal in every respect, except in the effect alcohol has upon them. They are often able, intelligent, friendly people.
Sure. So what we'll do is highlight this. So the number 1 was the psychopath. Number 2 is the type of man who is unwilling to admit that he cannot take a drink, full of denial in most cases, and so certainly so. The third type is the one that always believes that after being entirely free from alcohol for a period of time, he can take a drink without danger. I've certainly been there, even in the temporary side of things, where I would say, I took a week off, I can certainly control this. I took 2 weeks off, I can control it. Or in some cases where I was on a deployment with the Marine Corps and took some 5 to 7 months off, and then come home and thinking that because of that ability to shut things down for that period of time, I can certainly control my drinking, which I found as soon as I got back on drinking, that it quickly progressed to the point that I was drinking way too much and was causing way too many problems, both for myself and others. Number 4 is that the manic depressive type, who is perhaps the least understood. Perhaps they might be of a bipolar condition. Not that I'm an expert and or somebody that can diagnose that, but certainly they do find themselves in this group. And then there are the types entirely normal in every respect, except in the effect of alcohol that has upon them. And those are just the normal people that we see every day. I'm not sure, but I might surmise that this is a large population of folks that don't have any underlying psychological issue or challenges. They're just, as we say, a normal person that just cannot control their drinking. Rob?
All these and many others have one symptom in common. They cannot start drinking without developing the phenomenon of craving. This phenomenon, which as we have suggested may be the manifestation of an allergy, which differentiates these people and sets them apart as a distinct entity, it has never been by any treatment with which we are familiar permanently eradicated. The only relief we have to suggest is entire abstinence.
Yeah, and I think it's important here. We're talking about, of course, the allergy. You can't start drinking without developing that phenomenon of craving. And once it's got a hold of you, you just cannot stop. And that really is the basic definition of the allergy. The other thing is the only relief we have to suggest is entire abstinence. And this is where I think a lot of people that are normal drinkers, which we all wish we could have been, get the misunderstanding. It's like, well, why can't this person just stop? If a doctor told them that if they took another drink, they might die or cause irreparable harm to their bodies, why can't that be enough? If it was, a family member that was begging them to stop, why can't they stop because of the family member's request? And if the consequences are just so big that why can't they see that and not want to stop? There is no program of moderation, and I think that that's an important thing here. We are in a position here where we cannot drink, period. And so practicing a program of moderation, and I certainly tried that time and again, where I would actually or form a contract with my wife and say, look, I'm only going to drink 3 drinks tonight. That's it. Watch out for me, help me out, et cetera, all to find myself unable to stop and hiding alcohol, which is where it all came from, and finding that while I made it look, and these were in the later stages of my drinking, where I tried to make it look like I was only drinking the 2 or 3 drinks that I had promised myself off to the side of the refrigerator out in the garage or in other places. I had certainly I would certainly have a second drink waiting for me so that I could continue my drinking well beyond those 2 or 3 drinks. So just as a reinforcement here, entire abstinence from drinking is the only relief from all of this. And how we get there is to have that complete psychic change and finding our higher power. All right, I tell you what, Rob, why don't we bring Bill into it at this point, and we will pick up at this point and next week.
Sounds perfect, Leo.
Yeah, hi, this is Bill, alcoholic from New Jersey. Thanks a lot, guys. Good job here. This doctor's opinion, in my opinion, this is one of the best things in this book. And unfortunately, it's not like in the chapter section. It's not in the regular numbers. They put it in the Roman numeral section. And unfortunately, a lot of people start reading the book at page 1. They miss the forwards and the doctor's opinion. And this has a lot of really good information in it. Basically, what this doctor is doing, he's telling us what's wrong with us. He's telling us that we have this allergy. That's what he calls it, an allergy. And what that does, that brings on the phenomenon of cravings whenever we take a drink. And most people don't understand that. Something like 90% of the population are not alcoholic, and this doesn't happen to them, so they don't realize it. They think we're just drinking because we're troublemakers, or we're just looking to escape from life or whatever. They don't realize that once we take a drink, we can't stop. This phenomenon of cravings develops, and there's nothing we can do about it. And that's the point he's trying to get across to us here. And he's got and when he tells us here on page XXVIII, he says the phenomenon of cravings is limited to this class and never occurs in the average temperate drinker. So the average person, the social drinker, the moderate drinker, hard drinker, whatever you want to call them, people who are not alcoholics, they never experienced the phenomenon of cravings, so they don't understand it. They don't identify with it. They can't relate to it. They just think that we're just troublemakers or whatever. And this doctor is telling us that we have this phenomenon of cravings, and the only thing that we can do about it is complete abstinence, entire abstinence. That's it. Like Leo said, we don't have a program of moderation. There's no such thing as have one or two for us. That doesn't work. Once we take the drink, something inside of our body, something chemically happens in our body chemistry that makes us have to drink more. And that's the point this doctor is trying to get across here. The main point that he's talking about here is that symptom of alcoholism that he calls the phenomenon of cravings, or he refers to as an allergy. And most people don't understand that. They don't know that. If you're an alcoholic, you know what it is. Once you take a drink, instead of quenching your thirst, it makes you thirstier. That's what alcohol does to us. And that's the point he's trying to get across to us here. So there's really, really, really good information in here. And he talked about 5 different types of alcoholics. That's the last part that we just went through. It makes no difference what kind of an alcoholic you are. If you're an alcoholic and you take a drink, you are going to develop the phenomenon of cravings. Whether you're a psychopath or a person in denial, or the person that thinks they can drink after they were sober for a long period of time, or you're manic depressive, or you're normal in every respect, whatever category or type that you fall into, if you're an alcoholic, once you take that drink, you're going to develop a phenomenon of cravings and you will not be able to stop. That's the point this guy's trying to get across to us here. And the only thing we can do about it to keep from having the phenomenon of cravings is entire abstinence. If you don't pick up the drink, you won't get the phenomenon of cravings. You might be nutty upstairs because if we don't have a drink, so the mental part kicks in and we can get a little bit nutty. But the phenomenon of cravings will not kick in until we take that first drink. That's the point he's trying to get across to us here. That's all I got. Thanks a lot for letting me share, guys.
Thanks so much, Bill.
Yep.
Incredible. Now, Bill, also, let me throw in a little plug. Bill has his own Big Book study, which is on Friday mornings at 11 a.m. Eastern time. Information is in the chat. So come on out and let's support Bill.
Exactly. Thank you, Rob. Let's go ahead and close out with the serenity prayer, and then we'll open things up.
You got it. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and wisdom to know the difference.